crisis that these young men and women face when they come back from war. The crisis faced by combat veterans returning from war is not simply a profound struggle with trauma and alienation. It is often, for those who can slice through the suffering to self-awareness,
Can somebody try and turn up the volume?
an existential crisis. War exposes the lies we tell ourselves about ourselves. It rips open the hypocrisy of our religious and secular institutions. Those who return from war have learned something which is often incomprehensible to those who have stayed home. We are not a virtuous nation. God and fate have not blessed us above others. Victory is not assured. War is neither glorious nor noble. And we carry within us the capacity for evil we ascribe to those we fight. Those who return to speak this truth, such as members of Iraq Veterans Against the War, some of whom are here today, along with Vietnam Veterans Against the War. They are our contemporary prophets, but like all prophets, they are condemned and ignored for their courage. They struggle in a culture awash in lies to tell what few have the fortitude to digest. They know that what we are taught in school, in worship, by the press, through the entertainment industry, and at home, that the melding of the state's rhetoric with the rhetoric of religion is empty and false. The words these prophets speak are painful. We as a nation prefer to listen to those who speak from the patriotic script. We prefer to hear ourselves exalted. If veterans speak of terrible wounds, visible and invisible, of lies told to make them kill, of evil committed in our name, we fill our ears with wax. Not our boys, we say, not them, bred in our homes, endowed with goodness and decency. Or if it is easy for them to murder, what about us? And so it is simpler and more comfortable not to hear. We do not listen to the angry words that cascade forth from their lips, wishing only that they would calm down, be reasonable, get some help, and go away. We, the deformed, brand our prophets as madmen. We cast them into the desert, and this is why so many veterans are estranged and enraged. This is why so many succumb to suicide or addictions. War comes wrapped in patriotic slogans, calls for sacrifice, honor, and heroism, and promises of glory. It comes wrapped in the claims of divine providence. It is what a grateful nation asks of its children. It is what is right and just. It is waged to make the nation and the world a better place, to cleanse evil. War is touted as the ultimate test of manhood, where the young can find out what they are made of. War from a distance seems noble. It gives us comrades and power and a chance to play a small bit in the great drama of history. It promises to give us an identity as a warrior, a patriot, as long as we go along with a myth, the one the war makers need to wage wars and the defense contractors need to increase their profits. But up close, war is a soulless void. War is about barbarity, perversion, and pain, an unchecked orgy of death. Amen. Human decency and tenderness are crushed. Those who make war work overtime to reduce love to smut, and all human beings become objects, pawns to use or kill. The noise, the stench, the fear, the scenes of eviscerated bodies and bloated corpses, the cries of the wounded, all combine to spin those in combat into another universe. In this moral void, naively blessed by many of our secular and religious institutions at home, the hypocrisy of our social conventions, our strict adherence to moral precepts comes unglued. War, for all its horror, has the power to strip away the trivial and the banal, the empty chatter and foolish obsessions that fill our days. It lets us see, although the cost is tremendous. The Reverend William P. Mahady, who was a Catholic chaplain in Vietnam, tells of a soldier, a former altar boy, in his book, Out of the Night, The Spiritual Journey of Vietnam Vets, who says to him, "Hey, chaplain, how come it's a sin to hop into bed with a mama san, but it's okay to blow away gooks out in the bush?" Consider the question that he and I were forced to confront on that day in a jungle clearing, Mahady writes. How is it that a Christian can, with a clear conscience, spend a year in a war zone, killing people, and yet place his soul in jeopardy by spending a few minutes with a prostitute? If the New Testament prohibitions of sexual misconduct are to be stringently interpreted, why then are Jesus' injunctions about violence not binding in the same way?
Amen.
Amen.
In other words, what does the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," really mean?
Yes.
Military chaplains, a majority of whom are evangelical Christians, defend the life of the unborn, tout America as a Christian nation, and yet eagerly bless the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan as holy crusades. The hollowness of their morality, the staggering disconnect between the values they claim to promote, is ripped open in war. There is a difference between killing someone who is trying to kill you and taking the life of someone who does not have the power to harm you. The first is killing. The second is murder. But in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, where the enemy is elusive and rarely seen, murder occurs far more often than killing. Families are massacred in airstrikes. Children are gunned down in blistering, suppressing fire laid down in neighborhoods after an improvised explosive device goes off near a convoy. Artillery shells obliterate homes, and no one stops to look. The dead and the maimed are left behind. The utter failure of nearly all our religious institutions, whose texts are unequivocal about murder, to address the essence of war has rendered them useless. These institutions have little or nothing to say in wartime, because the God they worship is a false God, one that promises victory to those who obey the law and believe in the manifest destiny of the nation. We all have the capacity to commit evil. It takes little to unleash it. For those of us who have been to war, this is the awful knowledge that is hardest to digest. The knowledge that the line between the victims and the victimizers is razor thin. That human beings find a perverse delight in destruction and death, and that few can resist the pull. At best, most of us become silent accomplices. Wars may have to be fought to ensure survival, but they are always tragic. They always bring to the surface the worst elements of any society. Those who have a penchant for violence and a lust for absolute power.